Hi, folks. A couple people showed up so far. I'll wait a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Let a few more people straggle in here. And all I can do is tell that there's somebody watching me, so I don't know who you are. So if you want to leave a comment in the chat, then I'll know you're here. Shauna, I know I can count on you. Hi, Tom. Thanks, man. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. All righty. That was a great idea for a video, Tom. And I think after I get through this with this one, the next video I do, we'll start doing some refinement of the masks in Lightroom, because there's some tricks we can use on that. So, but I'd like to dedicate a whole session on that. So that would be the 19th. Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Sunday the 19th. So that's next Sunday. Prepared to do that. So, oh yeah, I understood completely, Tom. Yeah, that was not a problem, because it's that ever since I started using Photoshop, I have struggled with blend in the sky. We've got so many more tools now to be able to use to do that, where before we didn't. In the beginning, we just kind of hand masked all that stuff in. What a pain in the butt. So, but we can go through and select the sky, and we got a couple options for adjusting that too. So I went over the basic masks in Lightroom, if I'm not mistaken, but I think it was as it applies to dodging and burning on the photograph. So did a lot of oval gradient and linear gradient too, radial gradient. So, but yeah, trees are a pain in the keister to try to get right, but with every upgrade that they make to Lightroom, the Lightroom gets a little smarter. So the last update that they made to Lightroom, they made a lot of improvements in that. So if you haven't updated your Lightroom lately, go in and do the latest update on it and see if it made a difference. So, hey, Joe. Good evening, buddy. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it, man. What time is it? 6:03. I'll sit here for another couple minutes, but we got some people showing up now. So, let me think here. I pulled a bunch of photos aside. And so instead of going through some sort of a course, what we're going to be doing is going through and kind of doing a composition critique on some of my photos here. So maybe we can kind of get into the thought process that I had in my head when I was taking the photographs, when I laid out my composition. So I'm glad you got some free time to come see me, Joe. I appreciate it. So, yeah. All right. So can you guys are you able to see the my Lightroom on the screen? I always got to make sure I got the right one up. So, and I'm looking over here because that's where my little chat box is. So, I think what I can do is just kind of let me see. Let me bounce around. I was going to go from one side to the next. So, yeah, just in time for the Fibonacci sequence. And of course, when I'm out in the field, that's the first thing that pops into my mind is the Fibonacci curve, or something, but not really. But it's kind of cool to lay on your photos. I'll show you guys how to bring up these the overlays in Lightroom here, and we can go through and put some overlays on here and see how they look. Okay, and you can do the same thing at home with Lightroom and take some of your photos and import them into Lightroom and then lay this overlay over the top of them and see how close you came. So I know a lot of people, some people struggle with understanding or seeing composition in the field. And then there's some people that just see it instantly, and so I think it's kind of a gift, but there's everything in between being a natural and having practice to do it and to be able to do it in the field. So you're just going to try just for giggles, huh? I can picture you giggling, hey, bud. All right, let's get moving on here. I'll talk my way through these photos. I'll kind of explain what they are and what I had in mind and the situation when I was taking the photograph. So on this photograph, I was over on the Washington side of the river, across from Dotson. And I was over by maybe Little White Salmon River, someplace over there looking across. And I believe that this view is Dotson, if I remember right. But this is the Oregon side of the river. And as my mom and I were driving down the gorge, and I looked over and I told my mom, I said, I got to take a picture of that, So I got out of the car. My nose is tickling for some reason. I was at 66 millimeter. So I was probably using my 24-70. Joe, this is one of my favorite photographs. And it took really very little processing. And sometimes when the light is right, things just fall into place. So let me see here. Let me lay a grid up on here. Let me get out of that one. Now, all right, let's lay this one up there. Okay, for those that aren't aware, you can hit what I do is I use my crop button up here, my crop tool, and then I go through and I'll lay a grid over here. You can change the grid by just hitting this O. Just remember O for overlay. Okay, and so just click through these and then come up with something that, that looks kind of like what your photo has in it. That one's got some diagonals in it, but really I think that and keep in mind that I wasn't even thinking about these grids when I was out in the field, but this allows you to be able to see what kind of standard composition this might have happened to fall into place with as whatever. So as you can see, I came pretty close to this bottom line down here, and this was actually it's this isn't the rule of thirds necessarily, but the rule of thirds is within this grid here somewhere. So we've got a line that goes across here. We've got this line here, it follows the top of the bluffs, and this line's following the bottom of the clouds there. This one kind of splits the background or the hillside of the bluffs in the gorge over there. And the island is kind of laying over to the right side. And we've got a lot of negative space here, and I kind of would rather have this over here on the left-hand side in the frame because there's something there. You come over here, there's negative space, and I kind of shy away from negative space a little bit. And so the reason that I laid this out the way it was is because I wanted the island to help balance the weight of the photo to the right side a little bit, because this left side was heavy, the right side is light. If you can see it in the way I'm explaining it, it's kind of like your photo has weight to it. And so you're trying to balance weight with elements within the photograph. That's kind of how I picture it in my mind. And so that one laid out that way. If you guys have any questions as these come up, let me know. Okay. All right. So does that kind of explain how that one was? And I saw this just with my eyes. Whoops. Where did I go here? Let's get back to where I was here. There we go. My hand hit the keyboards. What happened? So, yeah, even if we wanted to follow these bluffs down through here, you can see how they're kind of following this grid here too. Let me find one that's more of a standard composition, like maybe this one. Let's put this one up. This other. Whoops. Let's go back here. Let's put that one up there. That's kind of the rule of thirds here. So let's see how this kind of lines up with that. So the way I was looking at this is that I was looking at the bottom as an anchor. And so I know I just explained how one side may be heavier than another side. And I was kind of thinking it more of from the right side to the left side. In this particular case, the photograph is kind of like a box, and you want something heavy at the bottom of the box. You don't want something heavy at the top of the box necessarily. And so this foreground anchored that area, and it also covered up the negative space that was in the river here. Okay. And then the city skyline kind of lined up here a little bit with this third line here. And then the weight of this building on the left and the weight of this bridge over here kind of balance things out. The same with the foreground. It's kind of a balance from left to right here. And I left some negative space up there because if I would have pulled it up further, then I would have had a little bit more foreground than I wanted. And so it's a balance. And so it was I think the photograph benefited more by having the sky up here than it would have if I had more darkness at the bottom, if that makes any kind of sense to you at all. Ale of ginger. So what I like to do also with my photos is that I like to imagine, or I like to look at a photograph and decide if there's something more interesting over here, or if there's something more interesting here than on that side. I will make that one more of a subject well, I shouldn't say that. I should make that more. Should say that I try to make that more. I'm trying to come up with the words here. I'm trying to make that area that's more interesting fill a space within the frame more so than an area that's not. So a lot of times, and this is where you break the rule of thirds and you break all these rules, is that um, you can start with the rule of thirds, but then again, if there's something a little bit more interesting up in the sky, you're going to want to include some of that a little bit more than at the bottom, perhaps. Or if there's more at the bottom down here, like maybe if I would have had some flowers or something more interesting along the bottom, then I could have moved it up and then left out more of this blue sky up here. But as it was, I kind of balanced it. And I think that I came out with a little bit more weight on the bottom, like I was trying to do. Hope that makes sense. So it's always kind of hard for me to explain composition because it's something that I just, uh, maybe I've been practicing for a long time, but it kind of clicks into place when I'm out in the field. So um, a lot of times I'll see a composition before I'm even set up for a photograph. So I approach the scene according to my first composition. But I've explained this in the past in my other videos is that um, I like to get to a scene early and I like to find as many compositions as I can before the light changes or something, and before the conditions that I'm there to photograph actually happen. And so I'll get there before sunset and try to find some different compositions. That way, when the light is right, um, you're not staying with one composition. You're moving around and getting maybe 4 or 5, even 3 compositions is better than just having one. So yeah. So I hope that explains that one a little bit better. Let's talk about foreground weight again. This one here is another one where this foreground is really anchored by these rocks and the fern over on the right hand side. So a secondary thing that this does is that it gives this depth. So this fern and these rocks are going to allow this photograph to have more of a feeling of depth than if you were to just take a picture of the waterfall in the distance with just the water below it or something like that. So if you add a foreground element, it gives you more depth from the foreground back to the background. Um, just for clarity, this photograph was taken really close to these ferns and stuff. So I had to focus stack this. So I took one shot for the foreground and then I took another shot for the background. I was able to blend them together. So if you if your foreground is very close to the front element of your lens, it's going to make your depth of field shallower. So the things that are going to be in the distance are going to be more blurry they're going to be blurry in the distance if you were to get really close, your foreground close to your lens. So if you take that foreground element and move it out a ways, then that's going to increase your depth of field and your background is going to be more clear. So I could have perhaps pulled back from this and then maybe zoomed in a little bit to buy myself a little bit more depth of field, but I'll kind of like this composition. You can see that it kind of lays right along this line at the top of it and then right along this line here. So, and then the rest of it is balanced. I wanted a little bit out of the top of the waterfall to get there. And so I was concerned more with the top of the waterfall than I was where the bottom of the waterfall laid within the composition. So, and it's pretty close to halfway, but the other elements of the composition are more important to me than where the bottom of the waterfall laid within that. So, Joe, thanks. I appreciate that. This photograph right here, I heard that they've gone through and they've taken these pilings out. So, yeah. So the photograph is one that was taken back when those pilings were still there. So it was quite a while ago. So, all right, let's look at another one. We were talking about a foreground close up. This one here is where I stood back and I just focused in on the background back there. I didn't really necessarily have a foreground that I wanted to photograph. This one was supposed to be more of a picture of the bowl or the whole scene that was in front of me with the creek, the waterfall. So again, the rule of thirds is only something that's supposed to maybe get you in the ballpark, but after that, the waterfall didn't line up with the rule of third here. I probably could have moved it over, but I didn't want to move the creek out from the center of the photo. The weight of the waterfall counteracted the weight of this big rock here. So it just kind of fell into place as far as weight is concerned. And again, this by a darker area down here. So another thing that creates depth in a going from a darker area into lighter areas. So this particular scene, it was darker down below and it goes up into the sky up above. So that's another way of creating depth in your photographs, is paying attention to the light in the photograph. So, okay. Let's talk headspace. We'll look at this one and talk about headspace. I just wanted to make sure that rainbow, the arc of that rainbow, stayed within the composition, is within the frame, I should say. And then I went on down, and this was taken at 16 millimeter. So I couldn't have backed up a whole lot further, if I remember right, because I think there was a pathway there, a trail along there. And so I wanted and of course the rainbow is going to be the star of the show. And so I laid the rainbow out in the frame so that it is complemented the best within the frame. So, and then this one here, I think I was back far enough that I didn't have to focus stack. And so these are in good shape, but in the distance, it's going to be probably a little soft on the hills. So, but headspace, pay attention to what's at the top and the bottom of your frame. So let's pull this one out because this is an interesting one. And where this one laid within the rule of thirds. I mean, the waterfall's right down this side. This actually is the edge of the tree line there. And so it may not look like there's anything there that line is following, but it's actually following down the edge of that rock. This tree in the middle here, or in the center, it's right smack dab practically in the center. The waterfall pulls it to the left. The trees over here are heavy to the right, so it balances it. And then down here, you just got the foreground in the bottom third, and it comes up to that side. This is just me going to a spot that's very familiar, that I've been to probably about 500,000 times. As a matter of fact, I used to live just down the road from here. I used to live in Bridalveil, so I know the Columbia River Gorge very well. So I've photographed Multnomah Falls quite a few times, and so I'm always trying to find a different way to photograph it. So this is another different kind of composition there at Multnomah Falls. And I was just playing around. I tell people in my workshops, film's cheap if you're shooting digital. You just hardly run out of photos. You just keep take another one, and see what it looks like. A lot of times you can take a couple shots and then look them over. Or even if you come back, look them over once you get home. At least you've taken the shot while you were out in the field. It's better than coming home and going, oh, I should have moved it to the left, or I should have moved it to the right, or something. So this is kind of a unique perspective at Multnomah Falls. So, all right, let's talk about looking out of the frame here. This is Joan of Arc. This is at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And you can see why I pulled her over to the right, is because she's looking over in this direction. So I didn't want her face gazing right at the edge of this screen over here. I wanted her over here so she can gaze over here to this area over here. And so, um, excuse me, this one here had this pipe coming down here too, which kind of helped the composition a little bit. But one of the reasons I pulled this out is because this will also apply to wildlife, because a lot of this stuff, photographing humans, street photography and stuff like that, believe it or not, can apply a lot of times to wildlife photography. So let me see. Let's talk about adding things to your composition that you wouldn't necessarily add. This is a fence at Sahaley Falls on the Mackenzie, and I'll guarantee you 99% of the people there try to photograph this falls without that fence in there. But I thought it was kind of interesting, so I left it in. Let me see here. See if I pulled anything in here that, well, maybe this one here. All right, this is another guardrail, and this one here is a natural lead into the background and to the light. And so let me see here. Let me try these other overlays here. See if, let's see, is it Shift O? I don't know. I want it up there, I think. This one here kind of really follows the Fibonacci curve. I don't know if you can see it well enough up here, but it starts up here in this corner where the light is and follows itself all the way around here to this bottom down here. So it's funny when this is at Shepherd's Dell out in the gorge. I've got a workshop going on in October. We're hoping to photograph these places in the fall colors, and so if you guys want to sign up for the workshop, got a couple seats left. So, but this is at Shepherd's Dell, and hi Inky, what are you doing? Hi Inky, little Inky's here. She wants attention because Mama's not home. So I photograph this rock wall all the darn time, and trying to find something different. I look through these arches. I photographed the moss on top of it. I've just really worked these walls for about all they can be, And one day I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking through, I think, Instagram or Facebook, and all of a sudden Art Wolf pops up with a bunch of photos that he took of these same guardrails. And so I was surprised at how many of our photos looked almost exactly the same. Let's talk about looking through gateways. So we like to do that. Everybody likes to do that, I think. This is at Oceanside down on the Oregon coast. Let me bring another one up. This one here's down in Portland. And we're using the cherry blossoms here as an gateway. Not all of them were in focus there, but oh well. Here's another one where I'm looking through the gateway into this this is actually a historic building. A church group leases it, has a long-term lease on this, and they maintain it and everything. They lease it from the Forest Service, if I'm not mistaken, and it's an historic building, so it's been there for a very long time. It once was a tavern on the old Mount Hood Loop Highway. So you can see what caught my eye as I was driving by. And this one here's another one where it's a perfect example of a gateway, an arch. That's not necessarily arch, but it's a gateway into some light. This one here, in a way, is too. The redwood trees are acting as a kind of a gateway to the light that's shining on that one. Shauna, which one were you talking about? Which one was I looking at here? We were looking at, oh, you were looking at this one here, weren't you, Shauna? I think that's what it is. But here's another one here where I'm looking through some vine maple trees at Lost Lake towards Mount Hood. So let me look here. What else do I got? Okay. But, you know, that one's kind of obvious. You know, I mean, the gateways are obvious. But let's see here. This one here's another one that's kind of unique. I took this one from a bridge that was overlooking the creek. So I looked down onto the creek, and these vine maples, the creek went down underneath these vine maples. The falls with the fence. Yeah, that's Sahaley Falls. If you haven't been there, you should go there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. There's a couple waterfalls along there. So this one here was a unique perspective. So I try my best to try to come up with different perspectives for a scene. And this one here is a really good example of it. You know, sometimes you're looking up, sometimes you're looking right, left, or whatever, but very rarely are you really kind of looking down on a scene. And so that was one. This one here's a good example of the light creating some depth. Dark vignette going off into some light in the distance. This has got a natural vignette, which allows me to center the waterfall in the middle. And even now you can see how it's lined up pretty well with the rule of thirds, you know, the way it is. All right, let's talk about weight again. The rocks over here on the right, I kind of wanted to include the clouds over here, but this whole scene would be nothing without this bird in here, because the bird gives this the weight that it needs, or it gives something to break up the more negative space over here. And so I think that it would have been overinflated on the left side, too heavy on the right, but the bird kind of brings it back down again. So, and of course, leading lines, we all like leading lines, right? So I like to explain how I got this photograph. A lot of people wonder. It's not focus stacked. If you focus properly, you don't, 9 times out of 10, you don't really need to focus stack. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything against it. It's just that if I can get a shot without focus stacking, I'm going to do it. Now, number one, if your photo is very sharp in the foreground and has a little bit of softness back here by the mountain, that crispness going off into the softness, it kind of gives it depth too. Separates the foreground from the background. So don't think that you have to have your scene or your photo completely tack sharp from the front to the back. The one time that you have to focus stack, like I had mentioned earlier, is if your front element of your lens is really close to your foreground, and then your background, the mountain's going to be really blurry. So then you're going to need to do some focus stacking. So one of these evenings, I'll go over focus stacking too, because it's a tool in your tool chest that you really should be able to use and understand, because there are times when there's just no way around it. You just have to focus stack if you want focus from front to back. So I mean, but don't shy away from having a shallow depth of field either. I mean, if you've got some beautiful flowers in the foreground and you've got a neat looking barn or something in the background, focus on the barn and let the flowers in the foreground be blurry, and let that blur off into the sharp areas, pull the viewer's eyes into the photograph. Okay. So hope that's making sense to everyone. Let me look here. Here's another one where the color temperature in the scene changes to create depth. So this was nice and blue down here, and it goes from cool off into the warm sunset off in the distance. And of course, the water is filling this area down here, and you can see how it trails off into the light. So we could probably lay over, let's lay over, whoops, let's see, let me try, no, that's kind of what I was looking for, but that's not really any good. Kind of, well, it kind of works, I guess, but yeah. See what I mean? Understand all the compositional standards, but just be aware of them and let the scene talk to you. You know, I mean, if the scene, I had an art teacher tell me one time, um, we were doing photography, and she said that, and and you'll see this still to this day. It's been something that's always been in my mind since that day, is to um, eliminate anything from the scene that doesn't help the scene. And so there are many times when I will start wide and then I'll start zooming in. That's why I love zoom lenses. I mean, primes are great if you're a street photographer or portrait photographer, something like that. Those are the savior of landscape photographers. Late 70s, um, zoom lenses. So there's really no reason not to have a zoom lens. So I will, a lot of times I'll start wide and then I'll zoom in and move it up, down, or right, or back and forth, and maybe zoom in a little bit more until I have everything in the scene compacted and in its place where it's supposed to be. And I've got everything else that I don't want on peripheral, um, out of the frame. So, okay. Here's a natural gateway. I'm sad to say this photo is no longer available. This whole, I hate to sit and think about how many times I came bounding down off the hill and around the corner onto this it wasn't a platform, it was just a shelf of rock, and it had a chain on some posts there so you didn't fall over the edge. But I would come down over there, set my tripod up, and then photograph up Eagle Creek to Mitlaco Falls like this. And I don't know how many times I went around and jumped down there like it was nothing. And then one day I heard that that whole shelf fell down into the canyon. So yeah, you missed a good photo. I just loved this scene. I photographed it every time I'd go into Eagle Creek. I'd have to stop at Mitlaco Falls. So all right, let's see here. I got a few more here, and then I'll take some questions if you guys have them. We got some leading lines here. What this is there was snow, then they got some rain, and the rain went down in rivulets, and then the snow came by and covered them back up again. And so I had to have, yeah, the light beams in there are always, and that in that area, it didn't matter if you were there in the middle of the day. As a matter of fact, it helped if you were in the middle of the day because the sun was kind of in the trees, shooting down into the trees. If you were there in the morning, it didn't really get into the canyon. So um, this is some of my black and white photos. This one I could have pulled this one more to the top, I think, but I think that it's fine the way it is. This photo was taken, it kind of looks like it could be nighttime or something, but I took some at nighttime, but I liked converting the black and whites that I took during the daytime better. How about reflections? That one there's a 50-50 reflection. Plus I got these rocks down here kind of anchored into place. I wish there was another one over here to the right maybe, but this has actually been one of my more popular photographs. I've sold quite a few prints of this one. So I wanted to talk about this one too. I had some people asking me about this photo. This is another one where I didn't focus stack this one here. Uh, I like to explain the way I focus, okay? On a scene like this, I'll take my camera, and I know I've explained this in some of my other videos, but maybe somebody hasn't heard it. But if you focus off into infinity, you're going to make all these trees nice and sharp back here, perhaps. They're probably going to be soft too. You get past I'll take it all the way out to infinity. So then your foreground definitely is going to be soft. All right. And what I like to do is I like to bring it up on live view, and I like to keep an eye on it. And if you have focus peaking, get your focus peaking. Okay. So focus it off into infinity and then slowly back it back away from infinity until your foreground just comes into sharp focus, and then stop right there and don't pull it back any further. And then in that particular case, you're pushing your depth of field out as far as it can go. And so stop down, create stop down, increase your depth of field, focus to infinity, then come back from infinity until your foreground just comes into focus, and then stop right there. And that will definitely help. It will help your focus in your landscape photos. Okay. So this one here, I love this scene because the creek kind of comes over this old log. The creek kind of leaks around the inside of the log over here. And I got this beautiful light coming in from the back with that beautiful forest in the background. And I love moss. So, yeah, you can kind of see how it kind of laid in place with the rule of thirds too. So let's look at this one. This one here, the star of this show is this water down here in the foreground. As it goes back into the distance, it kind of creates a unique type of leading line off into the distance. So, Tom, I'm a mossaholic, can I say? I love my moss. So yeah, that one, the leading line is that, and what had happened, as a matter of fact, if you look, this photo was handheld. And so I pulled up and I took this shot handheld as the boat was moving away from this scene. And I just saw it. And as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to bring my lens up or my camera up and get this shot. So this was with my 70 to 200. And you can tell that the foreground is a little out of focus, but I don't really care. It doesn't take anything away from the photograph. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this one. This one's balance. This rock is pretty heavy, but the light in the sky over here pulls it over to the left side and pulls it down and balances the scene out. So let's look at some abstracts. So you get tired of rules of thirds and things like that, start doing some abstract photos. Just take some pictures like that. You don't have to worry about filling the frame with texture. This one, you can tell my depth of field was shallow in this one, but I got the ones that are closest to the scene in focus. Oh, let's check this one out, you guys. Let's look at this one. I took this one out in Central Oregon. As a matter of fact, this building burnt down. This whole field caught fire there one day, and this whole darn thing burnt down. So distressing. Okay. So I was with a workshop, and we went out there and we photographed, and we were talking about focus and focus stacking. Okay. So we were talking about getting things so close to the lens and everything, and just same thing I've gone through with you guys. Okay. And so I use this to demonstrate. This was shot right at the edge of the field, right past the fence. Okay, so I was able to stick my lens through the fence and get this shot. So, hey Damon, how you doing, brother? Damon and I have known each other for 54 years. We just saw each other for our 50th high school, 50 years, 50th high school reunion. It's hard to even say. So, but anyway, I use this photograph to demonstrate how to focus to infinity, stop down, because I stopped down to, I don't know, I must have raked out my EXIF data on that one. But I'll guarantee you I stopped way down. Damon, it was a good reunion. It was so good to see everybody. We had such a special class and a special group of people that I went to high school with. I really feel we were really lucky. So anyway, let's get back to this photograph here, okay? So I explained how to photograph or focus to infinity and pull back until just this wheat just barely came into focus. All right. And so let's do this. Whoops. Let's move in on that. Let's look. Well, this isn't a real high resolution one. Doggone it. Not going to work for me at all. Maybe you can see it here. I need to go back and get a more high. This one here was crunched down for the internet, so it's not really in the condition. But you can see that when we would do hyperfocal distance computations or calculations, and actually do math to try to figure out focusing and stuff like that, part of the formula is acceptable focus. And so if you're able to get your foreground tack sharp and your background is in acceptable focus, you got a good photograph. As soon as it's not in acceptable focus, that's when you start focus tacking, okay? But this photograph here was one of the photos that I used to explain that principle, okay, or that technique, okay? All right, let me see here. Think I'm just about done. I'm ready to take a few questions. I don't know what else I can throw in here, but if you guys have some questions, put them down here in the chat and I'll be able to answer them. Otherwise, you guys can contact me anytime. You know how to get a hold of me. My website's gary-randall.com or -gary-randall.com, or just Google my name. You guys probably know where my YouTube channel is. You guys probably know where my Instagram and Facebook channel is. But get a hold of me anytime. And I've been really having a struggle kind of keeping up with communication, but I'll get caught up again. And then get a hold of me. And if you got any questions at all, I'm always really happy to answer any kind of questions at all. So, all right. So what do you think? Did I explain what I do? I want to bring this one back up again just because this one is funny. This kind of shows how angles going through there. We have two different grids. Fibonacci kind of worked with this one. So kind of looks like the artwork. So yeah, let me think. I don't think there's a whole lot more I can add to that. Let me see here. Yeah, I was going to show you maybe some wildlife, but I'd have to import it into Lightroom. So anyway, all right, everyone. I'm going to assume that you guys don't have questions, but if you do have questions, you know how to get a hold of me. So I really appreciate you coming. I'm putting together a Patreon page too. So if you are ever a Patreon type person, you can join for free over there if you like. And I've got some tiers where I'm going to be posting some other stuff too for those that want to contribute to my delinquency. All right, everyone. I think I'm going to call this one quit. We almost made it to an hour this time. I kind of want to keep these to around an hour or so. That way people aren't getting completely bored with me. So, Tom, thanks for showing up, buddy. And next Sunday, live video is going to be dedicated to you, Tom. So, yeah, we got along great out in the field, man. And I'm looking forward the next time that you and I get together again, Tom. I really do. Really look forward to it. So, Shauna, I hope you got something out of this. It's kind of hard for me to describe what I do sometimes, because number one, I've been practicing for so long, and in a lot of ways, some of this stuff kind of comes natural to me. So, but yeah, any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. All right, Tom, I'm trying to remember where you live. Type in where you live, Tom. I'm trying to remember. I should be able to remember, but for some reason it's not coming to me right now. So good. I'm glad to hear that, Shauna. So keep showing up here, every Sunday night. If you've got nothing else better to do, come and watch me stumble through my Grand Forks, North Dakota. Yeah, that's what I kind of thought you were up there. I need to get up to your neighborhoods, what I need to do, and have you show me around. So, and it's not that far away for me to drive up there to see you. I can probably make it up there in a day and a half. And so if Darlene's not in the car, I could probably make it in a day. I'm kidding. So, yeah, I need to come up there and have you show me around, So, all right, everyone, I'm going to call it quits. Appreciate everything you guys do for me. You prop me up here and give me this encouragement to do this, because I'll tell you what, it doesn't come natural to me speaking like this. So I'm sure I'll get better as time goes by. Ciao, Joe. Take care, Damon. Thanks, Tom, Shauna. Appreciate you guys. Take care now.